Up next, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Again, an E means that they were eliminated from the playoffs. However, they would have come in at 15th with plus 29 net points. The brain trust includes GM listed as John Schneider, head coach Pete Carroll, offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, defensive coordinator Clint Hurt, and special teams coordinator Larry Izzo. Quarterback we have listed is Drew Lock. That's a bit up in the air.
Well, let me just say real quick about Mr. Drew Lock. Word out of Seattle, if you can believe Pete Carroll, which I'll tell you right now, you cannot believe Pete Carroll, says that Drew Lock will be their starting quarterback. I do not believe that. I believe that the Seattle Seahawks are still in the running to pick up Baker Mayfield. Until the season starts, and that hasn't happened, I will continue to believe that Baker Mayfield will end up in Seattle. So that's all I'm going to say about that right now. But that's what I'm predicting. If it's not Carolina, it'll be Seattle. Look for Baker Mayfield. He ain't done yet. Okay. So let's
say something.
Yeah, sure.
Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo seem to be in the same boat.
Yeah, money.
Places that they could potentially go don't want to pick up their salary. I'm looking at an article now.
You're absolutely correct.
Where basically, it's the Panthers saying they want no part of his hefty salary.
That is correct.
The same thing with him and Baker, you know?
Yep. I understand that. But, you know, NFL teams have a way of working things out, especially when it comes to money. So we'll have to keep it posted on that.
That's why he had his brain trust here.
That's right. These are the guys who are going to have to work this out. GM John Schneider has 29 years as an NFL executive, serving as a scout and a director of pro personnel with the Chiefs, vice president of player personnel for Washington, and director of football operations for the Packers. So this guy's been around a little bit with some different teams and has held these positions, which are very, very important positions for every organization. He has been GM of the Seahawks since 2010. So he's been around long enough to have built a nice team, and he's been around long enough to have seen a nice team start to deteriorate. His work's really cut out for him. His head coach, Pete Carroll, also has been around for a long time. Pete Carroll was a position coach and a defensive coordinator for several major college programs before starting his NFL career as a coach. He started off as a DB coach with the Buffalo Bills in 1984. He went from position coach to defensive coordinator and then to head coach of the Jets. Then he went to the 49ers as their DC and ended up as the head coach of the Patriots from 1997 to 1999. Again, this guy's been around a little bit. He was fired, went back to college, went to USC. I can't remember. I think he either made it to and or won a national championship, then came back to the NFL as the head coach of the Seahawks in 2010. Been around ever since. Seems to be known as a player coach. Players seem to like him. Hope that keeps up because they got a long way to go to get their team back together. His offensive coordinator is Shane Waldron. Now, Shane Waldron has bounced around between different college programs and NFL teams as an offensive position coach mostly. He was a position coach and or an offensive assistant with Washington and with the Rams before becoming the Seahawks OC just this past season. The defensive coordinator is Clint Hurt. He started coaching his career at the D1 college level as a defensive line coach for the University of Miami and the University of Louisville, both D1 schools. He started his NFL coaching career in 2014 as defensive line coach for the Bears and has been the assistant head coach and defensive line coach for the Seahawks since 2017. Last season is when he actually became the defensive coordinator.
All right. So you don't quite believe in Drew Lock, eh, sir?
It's hard to believe in Drew Lock. I know I kind of look at Drew Lock a little bit like I look at my quarterback, Daniel Jones. His teams, the team he was on, the Denver Broncos, were kind of similar to the Giants in the way they constructed the team. They didn't really, as the Giants owner said, didn't do him any favors. The difference is they actually did try to help Drew Lock, at least offensively, by getting him a nice, young, talented wide receiver core. But they couldn't quite keep the defense together, and they depended too much on their passing game, him being so young. Then he started getting the run game together, but he just continued to falter. That's why it's going to be hard to believe in him with the Seahawks. The Seahawks kind of need a savior at quarterback, somebody to at least right the ship after losing Russell Wilson. I don't see Drew Lock being able to do that.
Yeah, well, that's a signing that they did not have to do. You know, nobody forced them to do that. So they must be thinking something there about Drew Lock, you know, or else they're seeing him as a backup. And like you said, they're going to go get, you know, and then he'll be back in a backup role like he kind of was at one point with the Broncos.
Yeah, my thought process is they saved money by signing him and starting him. They can use that money to maybe pick up some free agents in some other positions and position themselves, at least money-wise, for the next draft that's coming up that's going to have a better quarterback class. They might just decide to just eat this season. You know what I mean? They might just let the
season in the NFC West, eh?
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to tank there. It's a lot of tough games, man, for a team that's hurting.
Well, let's see who they got as a roster reset edition.
Roster resets. Well. Their biggest addition probably will be Rashad Penny, the running back, staying with them. He looks to be working his way into being the starter there. I mean, Drew Lock is, I don't know if I call him a big addition, but he is an addition. And I think they re-signed Cadre Diggs, their safety. That's a good move. Unfortunately, on defense, they lost Bobby Wagner. And the biggest loss, of course, is Russell Wilson. That's a huge loss and a huge gain for Denver. But the way this team is going, I don't even know if Russell Wilson could pull them through this. And you don't want to tank with Russell Wilson as your quarterback. That's just disrespectful. When we look at the draft, in the first round, they got themselves a top flight offensive tackle. Whether that helps Drew Lock or helps the new incoming quarterback for the draft next year, either way, this guy could be a mainstay of their offensive line. Charles Cross out of Mississippi State is a top offensive tackle and should be a Seahawk for a long, long time. Let me see. Round 2, they got a linebacker, Boye Mafe. I don't know a whole lot about him. He's out of Minnesota. Kenneth Walker III is a nice running back. He's basically a steal in round 2, played at Michigan State. He transferred from somewhere. He's a guy that went through the transfer portal. I think he was with Clemson first, and they weren't necessarily using him properly, or maybe he thought he wasn't being used properly. He transferred to Michigan State, had a big year. That'll be a big plus for them. Abraham Lucas, round 3, I don't know a whole lot about him. But he is another offensive lineman, which they obviously need.
Yeah, OTs, 2 of them. They got 2 of them in the top 4 picks. So yeah, it might help Drew. And I noticed you don't mention any of the other quarterbacks who are supposedly going to compete for this quarterback spot.
Because I don't believe they're going to compete.